Good evening and welcome to the Greg Tompsett Sports Show. You are jumping aboard for this week's fun episode where we are going to be doing NFL Offseason Power Rankings. We're going to be going through, welcoming on some great guests and being able to go through who we think, at this point in the offseason, things have kind of hit a little bit of a lull, a little bit of a, point where we can step back and make some actual evaluations on where these teams are in the offseason, who's made the right moves, who's been able to improve their standing amongst other franchises, and now where does that leave us in how we look going forward. So for this week's show, what everyone's talking about is going to be that NFL offseason power ranking. And I figured the best way to do that is to bring on two fantastic NFL people that I get to interact with online and on social media. Our man Jack Duffin from the Orange and Brown Report, and Lorin Cox, the host of Locked On Bears. Gentlemen, how we doing? Jack, how are things across the pond?
Yeah, doing well. It's always nice to jump on, chat with fellow fans of, let's just say, not the happiest franchise in the world. We're not sat there winning rings every year. And there's that sort of blue collar, let's fight for it and see what happens.
Love it. Lorin, how are things going? Some interesting moves in your neck of the wood as well. How are things going?
Yeah, it's been nothing but excitement all offseason, but it's nice that it's slowed down a little bit and we can take a minute to, reflect instead of just trying to react.
Yeah. So it's not an accident that I welcomed these two gentlemen on who obviously cover teams in the Bears and the Browns, who I have a feeling could come up in our draft here this evening. So what we're going to do is kind of go around, and each of us are going to go in order drafting our top NFL offseason so far. So we each have our own power rankings that we've gone through and ranked them, 1 through 10. And we know the teams that we think have had the best off seasons, but we're going to go around and pick them. So that way, once another guy picks them, we can't take them off of our ranking. So it's going to be an interesting way to see who has teams in certain order. And then I think it's also going to be interesting to see who values what kind of additions, where, some people are going to be looking for, hey, what is the team that was already pretty close and maybe they didn't make the splashy deal, but this little move or tweak might have pushed them over the top, or, hey, this team, might have been starting with a little bit more of a blank slate, but they added so much additional talent that you had to put them up there. And I'm really curious to see where your minds go with that. And, obviously at this point, we haven't seen a few of the dominoes happen. I think it's okay to count, if somebody wants to count Aaron Rodgers already as a Jet, maybe you could get a little leeway there. We haven't seen Lamar Jackson land with a team yet here. So that's still kind of floating out there. But I think most of the major dominoes have fallen to this point. So without further ado, Lorin, you're the visiting team here. What you guys won the coin toss. We'll let you lead things off here. You could talk, if you have any overall thoughts on the offseason, you can open with that and then lead into what your first pick would be in your power ranking draft.
I'd like to trade down from the first overall pick if I could. But you guys don't have much to offer in this deal. So I guess I have to stay here, take best player, best team available in this case. Yeah, I mean, big picture, we knew this free agent class, right, was strong in some positions and weaker in others. And especially, I think, like the sexier money-making positions, right? Not great edge rusher group, not great wide receiver group, not even, quarterback, we got a little bit of action, but we got spoiled by a lot of quarterback movement.
Maybe quantity over quality. There's more quantity than we've seen in recent years.
So I think that made it difficult to approach this, because it's like you can find the teams that, they signed some great guards and some great, positions that we don't get super fired up about, but can make really good value for the teams that got them. The team that I'm going to take with the number 1 overall pick here might not be the conventional choice here, but I feel like they've flown under the radar as an underrated offseason team here that I feel like I look across the board, holistically, the Houston Texans to me have done a great job of adding talent, and they signed a bunch of players, but they didn't blow big contracts on a bunch of teams. Like some of these other teams that I'm sure we'll talk about, Denver Broncos especially, they signed a bunch of good players for their team. But they spent a lot of money on Mike McGlinchey and Ben Powers and a bunch of other guys, and
a lot of 2020 Patriots vibes.
Yes.
We're like, hey, they added a ton, but they overpaid for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does seem like to me the teams that spend the most dollars, that doesn't always pan out. But the Texans, I look at the deals that they sign, it's a lot of 1 and 2 year deals, not a ton of guaranteed money. And certainly it's not a lot of like, big time headlining names that are going to absolutely change their roster. But they got really good value. I think it's some wide receivers in Robert Woods and Noah Brown and they're bringing a tight end like Dalton Schultz on a really affordable deal, and Devin Singletary in the backfield with Mike Boone. Like, all of a sudden they've got some pieces in place around potentially a rookie quarterback if they take one second overall or 12th overall, or if they start Davis Mills this season and let the rookie continue to develop. Like, I think they've added some some good value pieces there. And then, defensively, you bring in guys like Chase Winovich and Hassan Ridgeway and Sheldon Rankins up front there. Like, that feels to me like they're adding some foundational pieces without blowing the bank, but also getting good value on guys that if they work out, great. And if they don't, you're not stuck with them for the next 5 years.
Yeah, I think that's a great call. And I really like the message that it sends, that maybe D'Amico Ryans has a little bit of juice in the league, that like guys are looking to sign up with him. One, I think a lot of people are rooting for D'Amico, and that he's been that hot name for a while now, and that Houston's been a bit of a dumpster fire here for a bit, and like, hey, there's a chance that somebody could really go in there and sink their teeth in. And they didn't do, like you said, maybe some of the other paths of splashy signings, but trading for Shaq Mason just to be able to get that. They're adding in Andrew Beck as well. So if you're going to have a power running game, adding like a really functional fullback, but who can catch out of there, and a phenomenal blocking receiver in Robert Woods, those kind of moves aren't going to get headlines, but that can give you, hey, let's solidify the defense. Let's get a solid run game for a rookie quarterback to come in and lean on for play action, and then see where it takes us. And, if all of a sudden you open up and you give, let's say it is Bryce Young, and then at 12, you give him Jackson Smith and Jigba, and all of a sudden, like, oh, hey, maybe we can build something here and see where it goes. Jack, feel free to make fun of Lorin or to lean into your second pick.
So the Houston Texans did a lot of the stuff I genuinely like, of going, you don't want to cross that 10 million barrier. And usually every time I write on free agent targets, Greg knows, they either sign for the Buffalo Bills or they sign for the Houston Texans. It's kind of just the standard for me the last few years of whoever I go, these are the guys I want.
Lorin, he's had an uncanny ability to peg Buffalo Bills signings. It's been hysterical. Like, his wish list for the Browns is, some of them have been like 60% of them signed with the Bills. It's been hysterical.
So it's really good. The one thing that frustrated me this year with the Texans is they went for a lot of older guys. Most of their signings in that 29, 32 sort of range. And it's like, you almost want of what they've done the last couple of years, where they've gone a bit younger and brought in that guys in the 25 to 27 range. And I get you might want some older vets to bring in and have one in a room that really helps, especially with a load of rookies developing. But I felt that I've certainly had a really, really good off season. But that's the one thing I'm thinking, hey, if your time to strike's almost 2 to 4 years time, most of these guys are already going to be gone. So that'd be the one thing that I go, oh, I wish they'd have just added a few more younger guys. But no, really, really good. And you're 100% right. If you're spending 10 million plus on a load of guys, you've had a disaster of an off season. Go for that value.
And now for your pick.
So for my pick, it might feel like a bit of a homer pick, but as Greg mentioned, usually I predict the guys I want, and then they all sign for somebody else. And this was actually the season where they came to the Browns. So out of 14 signings, 10 of them were on my wish list of about 50 names. So really, really happy with the work Andrew Berry's done. They brought in nothing that flashy. There was one bigger move in Dalvin Tomlinson, which is effectively the move that I'm least excited about. We've got a 600 snap a season defensive tackle earning just over 14 million. Not great value, if I'm going to be honest, but it has been the biggest weakness for the Cleveland Browns. And at some point, you've got to go out there and go, we're actually going to fix this. And he's certainly the most consistent of the defensive tackle targets. Even the Hargraves, the John Payne, he didn't quite get to free agency, but it was in that group. They either have great seasons or they've just had their first breakout season. It's risky getting into that market, whereas this is a player that, hey, you'll get your 600 snaps and it'll be good. But Okoronkwo was a guy that the Texans signed last year. That's their sort of go and get these younger breakout guys. So really, really excited for what the Browns have got. They've filled a lot of needs. And now it's just down to the quarterback. Can he go out and play, or is it all just going to be an expensive disaster?
So I love the Thornhill signing for them. I thought that, they tried to kind of shoehorn John Johnson into that center fielder role when he should have been in the box, and now getting a guy who's actually a center fielder that you can put back there and Juan Thornhill. I thought that was a smart signing. Not overspending when you already have so much committed at tight end. A guy like Jordan Akins is a perfectly good tight end too to bring in. And then I think the price tag gets a little bit lost in what they traded for Elijah Moore because people just see the second round pick, but really it was a trade down of a round, and that you pick up a guy who, if we go back 16 months ago, people were talking about Elijah Moore as a future star in this league. And now you got him just moving down from the second to the third round and still having the third round pick back. I thought that was a really savvy pickup as well. So I think it's a very sharp pick. Two teams that I certainly had very near the top of my board.
One thing quick, Greg, is the Browns. One thing that I would criticize their offseason for is they haven't properly replaced their best quarterback from last season. I mean,
I was actually very curious where we would see Jacoby Brissett go, and that he had one of those like sneaky statistical seasons where like, hey, everybody kind of thought it was going to be the Browns defense was going to lead the way, and that Brissett was just going to kind of hold the fort down and just lean on the run game, play action, and just, kind of keep it at bay until Watson's ready. And instead, he was leading the team and trying to keep them in games, and the defense was blowing it. So yeah, hopefully for their sake, they're hoping for a full season from Deshaun Watson this time.
Yeah.
So Jack made a comment that really describes my number one pick here. And it was, hey, you've seen this as your weakness and you finally went out and fixed it. And that's why I picked the Detroit Lions. I think there was a handful of signings that people like, but ultimately, hey, we're getting our doors blown off here. We know we have some exciting things. You kept, if we include keeping Ben Johnson as part of an offseason, I think that's another notch in what they've accomplished. But knowing that, hey, we just are getting boat raced on defense all the time, and to go out and say, you want to know what, Cam Sutton, Emmanuel Mosley, and then the cherry on top with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, I thought was just a really smart way to go and approach saying, hey, we can afford to let DJ Chark go because we kind of had Jameson Williams on a redshirt year, and now we get him on the rookie contract, and we can afford to reinvest some of that money. I don't know that I love letting Jamal Williams walk and then just paying David Montgomery instead. Like, I think that they're probably pretty similar players, but with what a lot of running backs got, I wasn't sure that Montgomery was going to get 18 million somewhere else, but he's Lorin, you see him play all the time. I think he can punch it in from the 1 yard line like Williams did.
And I've got a little intel on that. Jamal Williams took less to go to the Saints than what the Lions were offering him. Basically, I was told via agents that the Lions had David Montgomery on line 2, and we're on the phone with Jamal Williams and said, listen, here's our offer. Take this, or we're signing David. And he was very upset with the way that they handled the negotiations. And he said, screw you guys. I'm going to New Orleans. The Bears also offered Jamal Williams more money than the Saints did, but he took the Saints offer over both the Bears and the Lions. So the Bears were willing to pay Williams more than Montgomery, and the Lions were willing to pay Williams more than Montgomery, and they still let stuff with Montgomery, and Williams ends up with the Saints.
Oh, what a weird. So it's interesting. And obviously running back is the hardest position to discuss in the draft and free agency, because there's so much from an analytical standpoint that shows, I think that people use the wrong verbiage. Like, it's not that running back doesn't matter. It's that I think there really is like such a crazy pipeline of, if you go around to any, little league team and any Pop Warner team around town, like the best athlete in town plays running back. And then even in high school, like some move to some other positions, but you still have them. And there's just so many 5'9" to 6 foot, 200-pound awesome athletes that keep playing running back, that it's not that they don't matter. It's that the replaceability is so high that you just have another stud athlete somewhere that you can plug in. And it ends up turning it into that none of them matter. And that, well, I mean, some of them do. Some of them still have value. And I was torn because the Bills, I was very happy, Damian Harris at $1.77 million. I can't be mad. I did kind of want Jamal Williams. I wanted the personality on the team. I wanted that leadership, and that, hey, if he's not going to sign for that much money, maybe we can do it. So now hearing that they handled that and had a chance to bring back a guy that I think was, for anybody who watched Hard Knocks last summer, like a guy that very clearly is a part of the heart and soul of that team. That's interesting that they let him go there. So I'm still going to keep it on my list. I like the fact that, again, keeping Ben Johnson is a part of my ranking here. Going in, fixing that secondary. Graham Glasgow, just another quality addition to an already solid offensive line. And then knowing they're going in with, I think it's 4 picks in the top 55, to be able to have a pretty good team last year and now have, 4 top 2 round picks to be able to add more talent. I feel like they're going to be in a pretty good spot going forward here. So,
I think
Lorin, what would your next pick be in our power ranking here?
just on the line,
yeah, please.
one thing to quickly add is the value of waiting. And it's not easy for every team to have the patience and wait in free agency. And the fact that they were able to wait and get CGJ at such a great price, and I only say the 3 letters because I butcher his name every time. But that was really important, because if you've got a desperate need in free agency, you have to go out and you feel you need to move early. Whereas if you're like, we're okay, but we could get better, then that's where the value. You've just got to sit there and wait. And it's painful for fans just to get through the first 2-3 days, but then the prices start dropping dramatically. And then people look back and go, oh, why didn't we get this guy at this value? It's like, well, were you willing to wait a week? Because you might get nobody. And that's kind of the balance off that you've got. And hey, they struck gold there.
We've had that conversation. I'll save it for one of my signings that's coming up here on one of my teams, if you guys don't steal it. That, of course, in hindsight, would I want to go back and sign that deal? Well, yes, of course, but that's not how it works. Like, you didn't know if you were going to get that, and everybody assumed he was going to sign for more, and then you end up with it here. That's just the way that those things go sometimes. So, Lorin, next up on the clock, where do you go?
Yeah, I'm a little torn here because, certainly a large part of me pulls towards the Chicago Bears. And
if you don't, I'll take them. So it's up to you.
That's kind of where I'm at here. It's like I was intentional. I don't think they had the best offseason. I didn't take them with the number 1 pick, and I certainly would have taken, I think, the Browns that you mentioned, Jack, for sure, over the Bears, and I think the Lions. Them and the Lions pretty neck and neck there in my head. So I guess I will go the Bears here, but there are a couple of teams that I think are on a very similar level to them. But when you throw in, we've been talking a lot about free agency, but when we think offseason bigger, of course, the DJ Moore trade, I think, is really the most pivotal part. Like, if this was just free agent rankings, I'd probably put the Bears a little bit farther down. They still have some very real holes on this roster that are barren right now, and they will be overly reliant on the NFL draft to fill. And they maybe overspent a little bit on a couple of free agents, but DJ Moore is great value in terms of the contract and his age and his fit with the team. They got multiple future draft picks, a future first and a future second, plus another second this year to be able to load up a lot of talent around Justin Fields. I think the idea is that this is a very incomplete grade right now, but when you add in the draft picks, in theory, that'll be a starting right tackle at some point in the draft. That'll be an edge rusher or 2 and a defensive tackle or 2, and a few other positions across the board that holistically should give them a pretty strong offseason. And in terms of free agents, like, yeah, they probably spent a little bit too much on Tremaine Edmonds, but they got good value on TJ Edwards. I think they got good value on the guard Nate Davis. Even the defensive lineman DeMarcus Walker, they pay it a bit, but they can get out of the contract after 1 year. It's a 3-year deal, but it's really kind of 1 year at a time. So I think they maintained good salary cap flexibility for the most part. Signed, as you were talking earlier, Jack, about the Texans, like, all these free agents are 25 to 28, 29 years old. So these are the younger guys that they think can be around for a few seasons. But they have mostly flexibility outside of Tremaine Edmonds to get out of pretty much any of the deals whenever they want to.
So you talk about how Jack gives me a hard time about previously the Bills stealing a lot of the Browns list. The Bears literally kept checking off over and over and over again. Our free agent wish list, my co-host and I did a Goldilocks show of like, well, this guy's too old and this guy's too expensive, but this guy's just right. And we did like that kind of free agent wish list. And my guard was Nate Davis and my running back was Deontay Foreman. And like my linebacker backup plan for losing Tremaine Edmonds was TJ Edwards. And just so many guys of like, oh man, come on, you're killing me. And when you go in with by far the most, salary cap space, I think you can forgive I think at a minimum paying full price for Tremaine Edmonds. I have been a huge Tremaine Edmonds supporter. Cover One gets lambasted for being Tremaine Edmonds apologists because we argue with people that, hey, he's really good, Like, he's not elite. We don't think he's the best linebacker in the league, but all of you people going crazy that he's trash and he overflows and gets, caught up in the muck and doesn't get off blocks all the time or misses some tackles big. Go watch any game of any 49ers fan in the middle of an emotional game watching Fred Warner, or go watch a Colts game and Colts fans watching Darius or Shaq Leonard in the middle of any game. Like, none of these guys are perfect. They all have their moments. And that, yes, when you have a guy who is a pterodactyl in the middle of the field with an insane wingspan, and there's no stat for, third down throw, the quarterback couldn't convert because he took away the entire middle of the field and had to dirt it or throw incomplete. There's no stat for that, but he's the reason that we got off the field, because he took away all that space and didn't let you convert. And that he's going, for Matt Eberflus, it's such a nice pick to have, plugging in him and Edwards into that linebacker spot. I think it's going to really raise the floor of that defense significantly. So I love their offseason. I thought that was a really smart pick. They were one of my next ones right there on the board. And that, yes, of course, it's easy to spend when you have the number one pick and you get to trade down and the most cap space. But I think crediting them for the fact that I don't think they overspent. And Andrew Billings, another one that was literally my wish list for defensive tackle, another name I'm seeing now. Not splurging more than once on any of those other spots, I think is really savvy, and that you just upgraded a bunch of spots all at once for a team that needed it, but legitimately did it. And now you've put yourself in a position where, okay, if we hit on this 9th pick and these other picks, you now give yourself the isolated variables evaluation of Justin Fields, where, hey, now we can truly say, is he our guy that we're building around going forward? Because we at least eliminated the noise of the rest of the roster. Jack, any thoughts on Chicago, or what would your next pick be?
So I think the DJ Moore addition was absolutely fantastic. And not only just for them as a team, that rather than you just get picks and an extra first 3 years into the future, I know you can't give just yet, but that sort of distance doesn't really help your team now, and certainly doesn't help Fields. So I think that was really smart. And it wouldn't surprise me if we see that's a blueprint teams now use going forward, of going, I want a really talented player in this selection of assets coming back to me, not just picks. And then you've also, if Fields doesn't work out, you potentially got 2 top 10 picks next year, which gives you perfect ammunition to go, look, we gave Fields a shot, hasn't worked out, boom, we're going to go up there. Who knows? It could be a team with a good QB that doesn't need one that ends up first overall or ends up somewhere else. You're prime position to either have success with Fields or still get his replacement. What you don't want to do is what Miami did and then spend all these future picks. And then if your QB gets injured and you've got a problem, you can't go anywhere. So, no, I think really
I'm here for all Dolphin slander, so please continue.
That was going to be one of the other teams I was considering with that pick. Just with, we'll get into that in a minute, but not because of not because of how they've handled the quarterback of the draft pick, but just this offseason in a vacuum. But keep going.
So when I started this and looking at the list of teams, effectively the first thing I did was anyone that paid for an average QB or doesn't have their QB position sorted, just started going through. They were the first set of names I crossed off.
So you're going with Raiders next?
One. There was one that I left on the list, and that's the Seahawks. Purely because they're $25 million for 1 year for Geno Smith with team options in the future. It's a beautiful way to do a contract and go, hey, he's good, but we can get out of this in a year's time. We're not tied into him for 2-3 years. And then just loads of great names that they brought in at good value. Julian Love, how he signed for $6 million a year, I will never know.
The safety market as a whole has been just confusing
for years.
Bobby Wagner coming back up there with one of the best linebackers in the league. Yeah, you're only going to get 1 year out of him, but I think that's a really useful addition on the cheap. Jerome Reed was a defensive tackle I really liked, signed for $4.5 million. And it's just moves like that. Devin Bush, $3.5 million, probably won't work out, but it's worth that risk. Evan Brown on the cheap come in. So just those really nice moves that everyone's been cheap, undervalued. Yeah, they paid a kicker. That was a negative point on them. I didn't like how much they've spent on
Draymond
Jones. I knew I'd butcher his name. So
but still, again, a very, very good player. They paid full price, but if you're going to do it for a very good player.
Yeah, but they've set themselves up in a really nice spot, and it's going to be fascinating to see what they do in the draft, because I think they'll probably end up, if they can, will they grab a quarterback and when? They can go lots of different directions because they don't need to panic at this stage, which I can only commend them as, if you're unsure on what to do with quarterback, that could be a blueprint to go forward, because I don't want to be the Las Vegas where you're tied in. I don't want to be Carr where you're tied in. They've got different directions they can go. So really, really impressed with the Seahawks, because it's so easy when you've got average quarterback play, just go, yeah, we'll pay it, stick to it for 3 years, and so what? Where they've not done that.
And on top of that, you give them any peripheral credit for accidentally stumbling into what may end up going down as one of the greatest trades in NFL history, like right there with Jimmy Johnson's Herschel Walker trade that set up the Cowboys dynasty. What now? You didn't pay Russell Wilson for crazy guaranteed money and got back all of those picks, all those players, and set yourself up to now have a free shot at maybe your developmental quarterback to sit behind, Geno Smith. I think it was a really good overall stretch here, and I think that's was a sharp move with Seattle. All right, so now we're getting into where we've checked off a lot of the obvious boxes. We've checked off a lot of the gimme picks here. So now it's really get into each of us with our last couple picks here on, do we go who got the best values, who had the big name that maybe was only the one move, but it was the one piece they need. I have one that I think still hit a lot of the value pieces, and it's the prices that the Pittsburgh Steelers got their guys at. So the player that I was talking about, in hindsight, I had a lot of Bills fans ask me, oh, why did we sign Connor McGovern if Isaac Seumalo was just going to go for that amount? And be like, well, at the time, everybody thought Isaac Seumalo was going to sign for $13 million, including Isaac Seumalo. So, of course, that we weren't able to get him on that day. And that, yes, every year we see players lose musical chairs and all of a sudden be like, oh, crap, all the spots are taken. I guess we just saw it with Dalton Schultz. Everybody thought Dalton Schultz was going to get more than what he got with the Texans. So instead, they get an awesome value on a one-year deal on a really talented player who's incented to have another really good season to get paid next offseason. And the Steelers, I think, hitting that, you add in even literally Keanu Neal and Brandon Fehoko yesterday, just super cheap deals, but like NFL roster caliber players that you're plugging in, and that now just a versatile piece you can use there, and bringing in Cole Holcomb and Landon Roberts after they've had some issues with the linebackers. They've tried to do letting Devin Bush go, never coming back from his injury early in his career, trying with Miles Jack, and obviously not getting that back. And I think that, do the names Devin Bush and Miles Jack sound more exciting than what Cole Holcomb and Landon Roberts are? Yes. But in 2023, who would I actually bet on being a more productive linebacker? I'll probably take Cole Holcomb and Landon Roberts. Like, those are good, savvy moves to plug in. And I think, adding even Nate Herbig as a depth guy to compete there, and having Seumalo, Patrick Peterson as a veteran in that defensive backfield, and still having obviously the guys that they have at the top there. I just thought that it wasn't flashy. It wasn't a ton of big splashy names, but every single guy they got, the price was like, yeah, man, that's a really good deal. Yeah, that's a really good deal. So I want to credit them. I thought that they deserve some credit here in having a nice offseason. All right. Feel free to poke at that one if you want. But Lorin, what is your next pick in our draft?
No, I think that is good value. Like, Steelers are not it was not a sexy offseason for them, but just like a meat and potatoes, a very Mike Tomlin kind of offseason. Like, they just
makes total sense.
Yeah. But for me, I teased it a little bit, and I'm sure I'll anger all of your Bills listeners, but like, I feel like the Miami Dolphins, like, for me, like, I agree with Jack where it's like, yes, I don't think long-term they're in a very good position, but if we're saying, okay, we're rolling with Tua right now, and we're going to see as far as that could take us, then I like what the way they're approaching it that way. Like, they really didn't lose anybody that they valued. I mean, Mike Gesicki is a good player that I think they should have been able to get more out of him. And I feel like you can find a spot for him in your scheme. If he's not a scheme fit, change the scheme.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, that confuses me a little bit. It pleases me that Mike McDaniel couldn't figure out a way to use him, but either way.
Yeah, but outside of that, maybe Landon Roberts is a pretty good linebacker that they lost, but didn't lose much, and they added Jalen Ramsey and re-signed a bunch of all of their key players. This was a team that was 8-1 when Tua Tagovailoa was healthy last season, and if they're keeping that whole crew back together, so you run it back essentially with adding a guy like Jalen Ramsey and a linebacker like David Long to bolster the defense.
Long is an upgrade over Roberts. Was a really frustrating move because Long was again a guy right at the top of my list to potentially replace Tremaine Edmonds.
Yeah, so like I said, it's not like a laundry list of oh, here's all the great things they added, but it's they kept everything and got a couple of really good pieces. And I like Mike White as a much better Tua insurance policy too. It's not, he's the reason he's not no one signed him to be a starter, right? But as good of a backup quarterback as you can get in the NFL, it just feels like they're running it back. And if they have healthy quarterback, that's a team that's probably pushing for an AFC championship game, if not a Super Bowl, but a very big if. But if we get past the yes, we're banking on a risky proposition there, just this offseason in a vacuum, okay, I think they did a good job.
Yeah, I would love to poke at it and say, no, they're terrible and trash. It is frustrating. I think for any Bills fans, and obviously plenty are listening, it's the risk that you're holding on to is that, hey, if you're going to bet against them, you're going to bet that, hey, I bet Tua Tagovailoa can't stay healthy. And that if he's gone, I'm not, even with a stellar roster, we saw that last year with the Jets, a stellar roster with Mike White is still beatable. And that I'll take my chances with that. And that, yes, it's not ideal, but I'm not nervous or worried or afraid of that. It's just, hey, yes, would I prefer a cream puff easy division game? Of course, but I'll take it. With Tua, we saw that they are certainly formidable and someone that has to be taken seriously. And at one point, the most dangerous offense in the NFL. So I think that adding in another guy, and they're betting on getting that Jalen Ramsey, maybe not the Jalen Ramsey we've seen, but I think people have also, Bills fans included, yes, is he the best corner in the NFL anymore? Probably not. But is he still a really good corner? Yes, he's still a really good corner, and that we'll have to deal with that as it goes.
And one addition I forgot to mention too, Vic Fangio as defensive coordinator. Should be really, really solid for them. So I like Ramsey back in that same scheme too that he was at his best at with the Rams. That's a good one too.
Yeah, no, it's frustrating. Well, and even special teams, adding Jake Bailey and Braxton Berrios to an area that they struggled with last year in special teams, and now you just solidified that a little bit more to be in a better spot. All right, Jack, pick a team that'll make me feel better.
So I'm going to go with the Carolina Panthers here.
Okay.
And it's not so much, weren't a big fan of the trade, but at the same point, if you've not got a quarterback, you've not got an NFL team. So they've got to go and throw it at the wall and see what they can do there. If you're in sort of a top 5 spot, you're not giving up as much, but how far they had to jump in the draft, it was going to be painful. So taking that almost aside, everything else they've done, really, really liked it. They've brought in a coaching staff that actually know how the NFL works, which it will be a big upgrade for them. But then all the players they've gone, it's another team where we're not talking about them breaking 10 million mark, but they've brought in Adam Thielen, Von Bell, Hayden Hurst, Shai Tuttle. You've got Bradley Bozeman, the center's returned. You've got DJ Shark on a deal. Andy Dalton, I think, is a really, really, really good signing for them because if their rookie isn't ready, he had a great season last year for the Saints. It was bizarre. He signed for 3-4 million and just provided a really good level of play. So I think it's one where they're continuing to go in the right direction after a painful loss of DJ Moore. But I think if the rookie QB is good they draft, then it could be fun to watch. They've tried to fill as many holes as they can, and they'll continue to have holes. That roster was bad, but good luck to them.
Yeah, I think it's a savvy pick because they're one of the sneaky teams that are actually bad while being elite or on the verge of elite at several critical premium positions. You have a high-end corner, you have a high-end pass rusher, you have a high-end tackle. You have a lot of the spots on rookie deals with really good players that are at the premium positions. Obviously, giving up DJ Moore hurts. Like, that's a really painful one. But like you said, none of that matters if you don't have the quarterback. So if that's what it took for you, hey, you hired Frank Reich, who is, known, I think, pretty consistently as a quarterback guy who's worked magic with retreads and band-aids for a while here. So now you're giving him a chance to, hey, go pick your guy. You get your number one pick of whoever this is. And that if it's CJ Stroud or it's Bryce Young or whoever it is, you get your guy. And now we're going to go with it. And that the cupboard's not necessarily bare at offensive line. And that, yes, does it hurt to give up DJ Moore? Of course. But, Adam Thielen and DJ Chark are at least professional wide receivers in that sense. Hayden Hurst, a legitimate starting tight end. Miles Sanders, a starting running back. Like, you have those pieces. You're not adding it to Chicago's situation last year. You're not putting Fields out there with, there's just no one to work with, and you're not going to be able to evaluate anything. You at least have enough functional talent to do it. So I think that's a sharp one as well.
Chark at a 1 year, $5 million deal was one of those I wanted the Bears to do so bad. Like, I knew some team was going to get him on a 1 year cheap deal, and I just like, whoever get it is going to get a steal. And I think that's a great signing. I'm going to hold my tongue on Andy Dalton thoughts. You're right. He played well last season, but I can't endorse that as a good signing. I can't. That PTSD, post-traumatic Andy Dalton syndrome, PTASD. Anyway.
Yeah, I think duly noted. So I think we'll see where that goes. But either way, having that as the veteran in the room with a rookie, that you have Andy Dalton there with Frank Reich and the staff he brought with, I think makes a lot of sense for who I assume is going to be CJ Stroud. But we'll see where that goes. So this last one's really tough. I've got a couple of different picks that I wasn't sure if they would get picked by other by you guys. So I'm kind of debating, but I think I'm gonna go. I'm gonna change my mind. I'm gonna go with the Giants. I think similar. I don't know that I loved every single deal that they gave out. I think they paid where there were some really good values at linebacker. They paid full price for Bobby Okereke. I think that was a lot to spend, but just needing to bring, trading for Darren Waller and getting him on a pretty good premium. One of the better deals that I saw, Paris Campbell was a guy that everybody loved at receiver. And the fact that they got him for 1 year, $4.9 million, I thought that I was expecting him to get much more than that. Just bringing in the different pieces and obviously keeping what they had. That they had a lot of things going. I don't know that I love Daniel Jones' contract overall of what they did, but I think the rest of the pieces, if you're going to bet on what they were doing, they would have been the spot that I really thought might splurge and go make the move for Lamar Jackson. If you could have plugged him in with the Brian Daboll offense, they would have been an awesome fit for that. But getting down at this point, I think every selection left has at least a wart or two in it, and I at least like the rest of the moves of what they did, keeping the talent that they had and then adding to it where you had the opportunity to. So I want to give them a shout out. Before we wrap things up here, maybe a couple other honorable mentions that didn't get out there. I'll add one. I thought that some of the money they spent was a little odd, but the Dallas Cowboys adding Stephon Gilmore and Brandon Cooks for 5th and 6th round picks is a, at least good value on the way that they turned those ones around. That was the two I was debating between there and the NFC East.
Cowboys is who I would have taken with my next pick. And I'm with you on the Giants. Like, I single-handedly dropped them farther down because of the Daniel Jones contract. Like, everything else I like, but man, it's not even about the total dollar amount. It's the guaranteed money. Like, they're locked in for minimum 2 years.
For sure too.
And it's like, oh man, like that's so important and just feels like such a bad commitment. Like, if it was been one of those like high value deals, but it's 1 year with like the Geno Smith deal would have been great. Yes. But then Geno Smith got his done first, and I think, and that was where the money ended up shifting up there. Yeah, Cowboys would have been my next team to go to as well. Just for, I love when teams trade late round picks for players. I find myself feeling like, we're at the point now where I would be willing to say New York Jets. And anytime you have a chance to get even just 1 year of a Hall of Fame quarterback, that one's pretty good to me. I would also say whatever team gets Lamar Jackson would be the team I'd put here. Like, I don't know that there's a team that I would say, oh, that was a bad idea for them. Like, I mean, the Chiefs, but like any team that's actually going to get Lamar Jackson.
I think there's like 27 teams where it would be an upgrade or a good decision.
honestly, Chicago. But that's that's a different story. But no, so like I'll say the Jets. I mean, I don't love. I mean, they haven't done anything like wild and fringy. I don't like losing Elijah Moore and replacing him with Mecole Hardman. Like, sure, but they get one of the McGoverns. But Aaron Rodgers,
Great trade for Chuck Clark.
Yeah,
Chuck Clark for whatever it was, like a future 7th was a really savvy one.
Sure. Yeah, but like we saw that team last year, right? They were a very good team, and you feel like you put a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers in there, even if he's not peak Aaron Rodgers, like that makes them a top contender in their division and in the AFC, assuming he actually does do that and doesn't retire abruptly at some point here. I mean, having watched him for the last 15 years or whatever it's been, like he's a wild card in every way, shape, and form, but he'll play really well and they'll be really good as a result. So that anytime you upgrade quarterback in a seemingly smart way, it doesn't sound like the first round pick is going to be there. So if they get him good value for a year of Aaron Rodgers, I'm in on that for the Jets.
Yeah, I think the current one I heard was 2nd this year and then a conditional next year where, it can be a 2nd if it's just, if things don't go perfectly or if he's on the team, whatever, 5 days into the league year next year, it's a 1st next year or something like that it could at least, because if you're getting 2 years of Aaron Rodgers, I think it's okay to pay a premium for that. If it's $60 million for 1 year, it's understandable that you would want to kind of lessen that. Any other shout outs or honorable mention for you, Jack?
I want to go really left field here. And this is a team that I hate everything they do with roster building. And at the trade deadline, they were trying to add CMC. They were trying to trade 2 first-round picks for Burns. And they've finally accepted what they were doing wasn't working. And that is the LA Rams. Because they have spent nothing. They've accepted what they did. It worked and they fluked their way almost into a Super Bowl because they should have lost to the 49ers. They should never have even
and the Buccaneers.
Yeah.
They were losing to the Buccaneers until that Hail Mary to Cooper Kupp at the end of that game. But
they've accepted they need to bottom out. And it's so tempting to go, we'll just push it a bit more. We'll push it a bit more. Whereas they're effectively blowing it up. There'll be several more players. And when I think it was the GM is doing a press conference about players you should be excited for next season and come up with a running back that was trying to, I think, requested a trade at the trade deadline. It speaks volumes to sort of where the team's at. But kudos to them because it needed a reset. And if they're going to go and do it now and really try clear out as much as they can for next season, maybe Sean McVay gets to draft another guy, and that's what sort of excited him. I don't think they're going to be bad enough for a 1st overall pick. You never know with how committed. If they keep just dumping guys, it might be that way. So if you need a player, give the Rams a call because they'll probably trade him to you.
I'm surprised the Bears beat them to the punch of signing Nathan Peterman because Peterman was so crucial to getting the #1 overall pick this past season. I thought the Rams would be all over that, but Bears fans were celebrating like he's earned this 2nd contract from Chicago because he was so critical in Week 18 to really blowing it and making sure that they got the #1 pick.
I mean, basically, Nathan Peterman delivered DJ Moore like that. That was the trade. Like you got DJ Moore for Nathan Peterman. That's hard to complain. So one last thing before we close here. I know we talked about Lamar Jackson. Any thoughts on the strategy of it? I think there's been a lot of discussion about why he hasn't signed. I think there's some more nefarious reasons. I think there's actually more strategic reasons that people want to admit about like, hey, are we 100% sure we want to give 5 guaranteed years to a guy who hasn't finished the last couple seasons? Are we comfortable with what he's asking for? I think some of that's getting clarity. I felt for a while here that it made way more sense for the market to heat up after the draft. Because if I'm going to give up 2 first-round picks, I want them to be 2 first-round picks that are impacted by having Lamar Jackson's performance on the record, and that's the pick I'm giving up. And that if I'm the Atlanta Falcons and I have a chance to add more talent here, and that you add, say they go and add another, they retain both their free agent offensive linemen, but say they add another, stud tackle, or heck, you put Jackson Smith and Jigba opposite Drake London and Kyle Pitts and say, hey, Lamar, would you like to come, run on turf with these guys? Or even though I know the argument all the time about value, heck, throw caution to the wind and draft Bijan Robinson and run, read option with Bijan Robinson and Lamar Jackson on turf and wish defenses the best of luck. That's where my head would go, is that I would wait until after the draft And then I would then make the, really painful, you can't do the poison pill anymore kind of things, but, really front loaded, heavy cap hit in the first year, and then try to make it painful for Baltimore to try to match it with guarantees through where Lamar accepts it, but more than what Steve Bisciotti wants to sign off for. If you guys had to make a wish list of where you think Lamar could realistically land, Lorin, where would your head be?
I don't think this team will, but the Detroit Lions is the dream for me. Like, oh my God, not the dream from the Bears perspective, but
yeah,
the
correct.
Like wanting to see Lamar Jackson succeed and going to a situation that would be fun to see him in, like him with that offense. I just think a friend of mine's a Lions fan, and he's like, no, like this defense is so bad. Like they have so many bigger needs than quarterback. Like they can roll with Goff and keep investing all those future draft picks on defense and stuff. But like, man, Lamar Jackson changes absolutely everything for them. And I just feel like he would be so much fun in that offense with those receivers and with that running back field and a good offensive line in front of him. And you could still use this year's draft to bolster the defense even a little bit more. And then after the draft, make a move like that. Like that one is that's the one I circle at the top of my list. And I won't go through like other teams. I'll let Jack have a few before I start just running down other teams.
Yeah, first on the timing, I wonder if we get to the stage nearer the draft where the Ravens actually will take a second this year and a first next year and just get the deal done. Because if they are accepting that he's going to go for a 2024 and 2025 first, you'd probably rather have the second this year than the 2025 first, because they're not going to be that many picks apart if you're trading for a team, say, in the 40s versus, hey, that pick's probably going to be in the late 20s in 2 years' time. So I wonder if they are inclined at some point just to go, hey, we'll do the trade. You don't even need to give us two first. We'll just move him to you, agree the extension as part of the trade, and be done. But for me, the one that's always made the most sense is the Vikings. Kwesi comes from the same school of thought as an Andrew Berry in Cleveland. They're never really going to be in a position to draft their quarterback because Kirk Cousins is good. He's not great. He's not bad. He's just good. He's almost like Andy Dalton back in with the Bengals.
Cincinnati. Yeah.
You're always going to get 7 to 9 wins, and that is the worst place to be. It's NFL purgatory. So I wonder if he's going to just come out. And the fact that they didn't restructure all of Kirk Cousins' contract shows that, hey, we can get off a bit of this. Obviously, if they get closer and they can move him post-June 1st, potentially in a trade or something there, that helps with some of the cap compliance with adding Lamar. But I think that's the team that makes an awful lot of sense. And then just a wild card is the Titans. But I would much rather he doesn't end up in the AFC.
Can someone go to the
rule. They
NFC,
have to come to the AFC.
Yeah, I don't understand why every talented quarterback needs to come to the AFC. Like, could some go the other direction? Like, we got a stockpile going on. But all right, we appreciate you guys. This was awesome. Really appreciate your time today. Thank you for all the fans that are listening. This is a lot of fun. We will be back after I get back from vacation. So looking forward to talking to you guys soon. But on behalf of Jack Duffin and Lorin Cox, this is Greg Tompsett. You have been listening to the Greg Tompsett Sports Show, and we are out.